Welcome to Maybe You're Interested, but probably not. A weekly podcast where we discuss topics in culture, questions from scripture, or things that we just find humorous or interesting. This podcast is brought to you by Northview Church in Kodak, Tennessee, and you can reach out to us anytime by visiting our website at www.mynorthview.church. Thanks for joining us. And now, on to this week's episode.
Well, hello and welcome to Maybe You're Interested. It's a podcast of Northview Church. I'm Greg Rains, joined here like we are almost every week by Mr. Jesse Cate.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I was just asking you how you doing. You cut me off, man.
Yeah, sorry. I'm doing really good.
Yeah, obviously we're not professionals at this, and just want to give another shout out to Mr. Kenneth Cate and Miss Linda, because we know
their anniversary today.
Is it really?
Yeah, 41 years.
Yeah, probably not the day they're listening to this.
Yeah, they probably will.
This won't be up today.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. In case you didn't know, we pre-record this. It comes out on Thursdays, which I'm assuming is not their anniversary.
It's not. No, it's not.
This is Tuesday. Yeah. But happy anniversary, belated, Mr. Kenneth and Miss Linda. I almost said Mr. Linda and Miss Kenneth. Anyways, this is already going sideways. So we got a topic we're going to cover today. We're just going to jump right in. We're going to talk about depression in the church and anxiety in the church and how we should handle that.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, there's kind of a stigma attached to those things, and especially in the church for some reason. I've heard it said a million times when someone has depression or dealing with anxiety. I've heard people, well-meaning people, I think, say, well, if they only had enough faith, it would be gone.
I've heard that too.
So what kind of things have you seen or experienced in the church to do with depression or anxiety, or what's your opinion? Where would you come from on that?
Yeah, I think, so I've never personally dealt with depression, I don't think, but I have personally dealt with anxiety, and I still get anxiety sometimes when I'm going into work or something like that, and it's just hard to get out of bed, when you just want to stay in bed and get under the covers. But I think as it pertains to the church, I think you're right. I mean, I think a lot of what you hear is, well, they just don't have enough faith, and if they lived out their faith a little bit more, then maybe that wouldn't be an issue. But I think that's something that a lot of people deal with, and I think that maybe it doesn't come to the forefront when you're thinking about it, but I think it's a pretty common issue. And two, you have like the older generation who thinks that people today are just weenies, pretty much.
You're talking to your dad, right?
No, I'm talking really to Megan's dad, but he doesn't listen. So.
Jerry doesn't listen, huh? Got to have a talk with Jerry. So why do you think it is that it's kind of a stigma in the church? Why do so many Christians look at things like depression, anxiety, or any of those kind of issues and just think, I don't know, that it's not real, or however they may look at it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to, what we said earlier. I think that they just think of it as, well, they're not putting their faith in God, or they wouldn't have those issues, when in all reality, like, that's something that continues to drive us towards God, or should continue to drive us towards God. It's not something that you want to deal with, but I think it happens a lot more than people think.
Yeah. I think in the perfect world, as a Christian in the church, we would hope that it's not something that we deal with, because we do find joy in Christ, and He is all that we need for joy, and we should be able to just latch onto that. But it is so prevalent, and it's just as prevalent in the church as it is outside the church, especially this year. I mean, there's been so much going on with COVID and being locked in your house for months at a time.
Can't go do anything.
Yeah, can't go to a movie or anything like that.
Yeah,
and it kind of gets old, especially the community we're in. It's the restrictions have kind of let up, or people just aren't following them. I'm not sure, but other places in the country, it's just so locked down right now, and looks like we may be going towards even more of that coming up soon with the numbers going up. And how do we deal with that as Christians dealing with this kind of crazy time in our world right now? How do we deal with that?
I think that, and Megan and I really looked at our time kind of in lockdown as time to improve. And I shared with you recently that I kind of struggled spiritually during everything that was going on. It was hard for me. I'm a person that likes to be involved in church. I like to be here when the doors are open. Yes, I leave as soon as events are over, but that's just how I do
Sometimes before they're over.
No, right as soon as they're over.
Yeah, right before cleanup starts.
No, I always clean up most of the time. I asked you last week if you wanted me to help you clean up.
I'm just giving you a hard time,
okay,
although I did pick up your spit cup when I left. But
well, that's okay.
That's beside the point.
Anyways, I just think that during that time, we struggled, or not we, I struggled spiritually. And so after a couple of weeks, I just took some time to reflect and to think about things, and really through prayer and some other things as well. But for me, we wanted to look at it as a time to better ourselves in some way. And we did a lot of yard work and did a lot of things like that. But we also, after the first few weeks, after we struggled spiritually there, we just looked at it as an opportunity to get to spend more time with God. I can say that now because I'm not with the company that I was with at that time, so I can say that freely. But we would take some time out of the day and have a quiet time. And one thing that we've started back pretty recently too is Megan and I both, we always pray at night, but we started praying together again, and that's just brought us a lot closer as a married couple, and I'm appreciative of it now.
Yeah, I've actually read some stuff on this recently, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this issue till last night when we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about on this podcast. But it is a huge issue, and I've heard some stuff recently where the statistics in the church, for some areas of the church, it's actually worse than the regular world as far as depression and anxiety go. I was shocked to find out that men in the pastorate, in the ministry, have one of the highest suicide rates out of any profession.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And that's when your leaders are struggling with it and they don't seem to have anywhere they can turn for it to get help.
Yeah,
it's obviously going to bleed down to the rest of the church and the rest of the people.
Absolutely. My guess would have been that the younger crowd, like high school and college kids,
there's a huge struggle with that too, and part of that is just because there's such a war going on between what society's presenting them now and their faith, and kids struggle with the things that are out there now, and when they can't find answers, and one side's telling them this, one side's telling them that, and nobody's really showing them any love or compassion, then they go to dark places. Really.
Well, and I think too, you and I are pretty lucky. I grew up right on the tail end of it. You're a little bit older than me, so you grew up. But we grew up learning kind of how to entertain ourselves and not being dependent on a tablet or a phone or sometimes even a TV.
I played with sticks.
Yeah, man. I mean,
just kidding. I had a Nintendo, but still.
My mom would give me all her old broom handles, and they were lightsabers, so it was great.
My very first set of drums that I made, I made them out of shoe boxes, pots, and pot lids were my cymbals.
Yeah,
you just had to be creative.
Yeah, you really got to. And I think today, the generation that's grown up today, and even people from our generation now, are so dependent on those things, and that doesn't bring you happiness at the end of the day. I know I just went way
but it's relevant to what we're talking about. Just kind of a side story, because I know my brother doesn't listen to this podcast, because we didn't have video games when I was real young. We got those when I got a little bit older, and so we play with Hot Wheels. Yeah, you don't even know what those are.
I do know what Hot Wheels are. Yeah.
Sometimes we played with the other one. What was the other one called? Hot Wheels.
I don't know.
Yeah. There's two of them that are big.
Lincoln Logs.
Yeah. No, the cars. There's two different cars. Matchbox. But anyways, I remember one specific instance, and he did this all the time. We were driving home, and we saw a really bad car accident. So we look at it, and we're all worried about it. And then we get home, and I hear banging in my brother's bedroom. And he had got a hammer, and he was recreating the car accident with his Matchbox cars. Yeah. Has nothing to do with this podcast, but anytime I can make fun of my brother, I do.
Also, just real quick too, TV wasn't an option for me growing up, because whenever we were home, it wasn't kids' TV time.
Oh no! I told my son that the other day. I said I got TV on Saturday mornings, and when I got home from school, I could have it from 4 to 5. Yeah. And I watched, cartoons or Brady Bunch or whatever. You don't know what Brady Bunch is, probably.
I do know what Brady Bunch is, yeah.
But yeah,
It was on TV Land.
I remember when Cartoon Network came out.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like in hog heaven, and I still never got to watch it.
Yeah.
I had to watch Days of Our Lives.
Oh, man, that's worse than what I had.
On VHS tape because my granny had to record it. But anyways, we're so far off topic right now. When we think about the issue of depression and anxiety, we also have to realize the stigma that goes with it, because it's oftentimes deeper than just an emotional issue. It's really a mental health issue.
Yeah.
Because there are chemical imbalances my family has experienced with mental health issues. I know a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, but several in our church who've had experiences with mental health issues. So sometimes it's not just getting along with the Lord and laying your burdens on Him. Sometimes you really need to go out and seek help.
Sure.
So I've got 4 things that I want to talk about as we wrap up our discussion on this. These will take a few minutes to talk about, but these are really, if you read our blog, there was a blog about it today, so you're ahead of the game on that. But there's 4 things that I'm going to ask you about because you didn't bother reading the blog today, and you can give me some feedback.
I didn't have access to it because we signed off of Facebook.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
But anyways, 4 things that I think help with dealing with these issues. And I'm not a certified professional counselor, anything like that. But these are kind of common sense things and kind of some biblical things that I think help. So the first thing is recognize what triggers you, what sends you into those areas of depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
So,
I think Megan would attest to this. For me personally, it is running late, running behind. It drives me up the wall. And it's so funny because when we got married, and this is not anything I wouldn't say in front of anybody, but when we got married, Megan was always late. I mean, you remember when she used to come.
No comment.
Yeah. To practices at Mount Harmony. And now, like, we may be late sometimes, but for the majority of the time, we're on time. But that just, for whatever reason, it triggers me, and like it drives me up the wall whenever we're running late.
Yeah.
So
we already talked about the COVID stuff and how being quarantined can trigger things. And I had some triggers while I was quarantined. It's kind of weird for me. One thing that triggers me, and I don't have deep depression issues, but I do kind of get those depressive feelings occasionally. And for me, it shouldn't cause this. You'd think this would cause joy, but it's nostalgia.
Really?
So
me talking about all these old times is
that's what's weird. I love, and it's only in certain times.
Yeah.
Especially this time of year or in the winter when it's dark, when it gets dark early.
Oh yeah.
And then you'll see a movie that'll come on, or an old TV show, or see some old pictures, and it just sparks a memory, and then you start thinking of people who've gone on, or just missing a certain time, and sometimes for me, that kind of triggers that kind of heavy feeling of loss. So that's one of my triggers is nostalgia, which nostalgia is supposed to do the exact opposite of causing depression. And for the most part, it does for me. But there's occasional times where I'm like, man, I miss that time.
Yeah.
And then I realize I'm old. And then I realize I'm over halfway through my life.
Oh, man, yeah.
Dude, don't encourage that. Now you're going to get me depressed. It's dark outside.
Yeah. You got a lot of factors working against you here.
Yeah. Now, anxiety, that is something that I don't know that I've ever really dealt with anxiety. Maybe when I was, it's kind of weird that I'm a pastor now because public speaking used to totally terrify me.
Oh, yeah, that gets me too.
Also, private speaking used to, just speaking in general. I didn't talk a lot. And now that I have to stand up here and do it every week, you would think that I would be terrified, but I don't know.
I'd say you're pretty used to it now. I mean, you've done it.
I guess.
For a while.
I don't know if you ever get used to it, but
Excuse me.
I enjoy it. So,
yeah.
But back to what this was, recognizing what triggers you. I think if you don't recognize the things that are going to put you in those feelings of despair, feelings of depression, feelings of anxiety, then the small thing can turn into a big thing and it can snowball out of control.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is when you do find yourself in those situations, and really this should be a fundamental thing that we're doing anyways, seek Jesus.
Yeah.
I used in our blog today, I talked about Matthew 11:28-30, and he's talking about finding rest in him, casting your burdens onto him. But how do you do that?
Well, I think it's a lot easier said than done, first of all. And I know that, I can speak as a man. As a man, I think that we are just geared to want to fix everything and want to take the burden off of our families and not let them see the issues and some of the things that are going on. So I always, and then this is a personal story. Megan and I had some things that we were dealing with this weekend, and I wouldn't say broke down, but I mean, I was upset, and I cried in front of her a little bit. I know, it was terrible. And I felt awful. I felt like, as a man and as a husband, that I failed her a little bit, really, and as a father. But honestly, I think that me doing that, I felt so much better afterwards. So me talking to her made it feel that much better. And then, later on when we had our prayer time, we brought it up again and asked God for his guidance through that time. And it can be hard as a man today, or as a man at any time, or even as a woman, to admit that you can't handle it and that you need help. But one thing that's always stuck with me, and it was from a study that we did back in the youth group at Mount Harmony together, it was, I need God's help to love God and to seek God and to do those things. I can't even do that on my own.
Yeah.
So for me, like, just recognizing that I need to lean on God to seek God. And I think that was just a very cool thought to me, and I never thought about it like that. It makes sense when you hear it.
Yeah.
But you just don't. I didn't think about it that way, at least. So,
do you have any practical ways that you've done that, where you've kind of leaned onto Jesus in certain situations? Or?
Yeah. I think whenever I had a new job opportunity come up about, I guess it really started about 4 or 5 months ago, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was happy with where I was. Didn't have any issues really. And then once I interviewed for the other job and started talking to them a little bit, Megan and I both prayed about it a lot, prayed about it together. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or what God wanted me to do at first. But it seems like the more we went through that process, the interview process, which with this company is a long time, it took about 4 months. But once we started going through the interview process, like, everything just started lining into place.
Yeah.
I was in a workplace where I wasn't unhappy, but they didn't have any Christian values, and I was finding myself being put in a lot of weird situations that I didn't feel comfortable being in. And the company that I work for now is kind of built upon Christian values, and so I really think it was a God thing that it came about.
Yeah. For me, when specific things have come up, especially in those times when I am kind of feeling heavy with whatever's going on in life.
Yeah.
Christy and I've gone through a lot of loss and a lot of things in our life. For me, it's the Psalms. I always turn to the Psalms, because there's it's just full of the writers who were going through so much turmoil and just crying out to God. And then worship music,
Yeah, worship music is big for me too.
I'll go down to my man room, and I'll just sometimes by myself, because nobody wants to hear me sing, and I'll just turn on worship music and just listen and let the words pour over me, and that really helps my heart turn back to God and release some of the things that I'm dealing with. So that's the second thing, is always seek Jesus, whatever your struggle is. And when you're facing depression, Jesus, you got to recognize your triggers. You got to put it all on Jesus and let him kind of take the burden. The third thing I have on here is you got to find community, and you've got to be thankful. We are social people. I'm not really. I like to be alone.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing I learned throughout this whole quarantine was, while I do like to be alone, and I really like to just pop on a ball game and watch it by myself, or watch a movie by myself, I still need human interaction.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't require it as much as some people, but we're created to be relational people. And really that's an image of the triune God in itself, that they are relational in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Philippians chapter 1, Paul is acknowledging community. And when he acknowledges that, not only does he acknowledge his love for them and his need for them, but he acknowledges his gratitude for them. And there's something about just saying thank you to the Lord that changes you.
I think so.
I saw a Facebook post a while ago. I know you're off Facebook.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm going to try to remember exactly what it said. I'll probably get it totally messed up, but it said something along the lines of, that house that you have that is too small, the homeless person would love it.
Oh, yeah.
Or that job that you hate, the unemployed would love it, those kind of things.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does when you think about it, because, I mean, you've been to my house. It's not that big, and sometimes I want a bigger house, but then I think...
It's bigger than my house.
Well, you need a bigger house. But then I think, the Lord has blessed me with it. This is a first world problem.
Oh, absolutely.
After you've been on mission trips, and you go to these third world countries, and you see 20 kids living in a metal 1-room building or 2-room building, you realize your house is pretty darn big.
Yeah, that's something that really, for me, really put everything into perspective. Is whenever I was a senior in high school, as the first time I'd ever traveled out of the country. We went to Guatemala on a mission trip with Mount Harmony. The youth went, and I was just exiting my senior year of high school. And I will never forget, we drove out like 45 minutes to a little village, and we took like 12 or 15 chickens. I've never seen anybody as excited about anything as they were about those chickens. And, I didn't even think about it that way. I mean, they weren't even, cut up and cooked. They were live chickens, so... they're still going to have to do a lot of work, but they were they were pumped. So that really put it in perspective for me. But just to talk about the community thing a little bit too, I know for me and Megan, the biggest help for us is being part of the life group that we're a part of.
Has been for us too.
Yeah, and it's just to be able to, because I mean, it's not always going to be easy, and it's not always easy to wake up on Sunday mornings and come to church and get here early and do those things, but whenever, it's like having an accountability partner too. If we're not there on a Sunday, they're going to say, Jesse, what's up, man? Were you playing golf on Sunday? Like, that's not a golf day. That's a God day.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's really helped us not only with the accountability, but also just being able to kind of walk through life together with them as well.
Yeah. One word of caution on community, because I've made this mistake. Make sure your community are Christian believers, because the advice you get from non-Christians can drive you deeper down the rabbit hole, and it can get pretty ugly when you choose the wrong people to listen to.
Yeah.
So that one is, surround yourself in good Christian community. Be thankful for who you're surrounded with, for them, and for what God's blessed you with. Yeah. And then the last thing that I've got on here is, if you're facing depression or you're facing anxiety and you can't shake it, and for whatever reason, even though you're seeking community and you're trying to put your trust in Jesus, and you even recognize the things that are triggering you, just can't shake it, don't be afraid to get help.
Yeah.
There should not be a stigma that goes along with depression or anxiety, because it can, like I said earlier, can be a mental health issue. Yeah. And mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, even though I don't think, especially earlier generations, didn't really recognize that. They just kind of...
No, I would agree with that.
They would put things off to weakness or whatever, but mental health is a very real thing.
Well, it's like, one really good example I like to think of when you talk about that is World War I. People came back from the war, they weren't the same. They said, oh, that guy's just shell-shocked. And now, that's PTSD, you know, and it's a very serious thing.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Well, we're in a world right now that just is shaken. Things are not the way that anybody expected when they went into 2020. Facing a pandemic, and depression is on the rise. Suicide rates are skyrocketing. I think that's one of the things that is kind of getting lost in all of this. Everybody's worried about the rates of the virus going up, but the suicide rates and the depression rates are just as important, if not more so, because that really changes the future for a lot of people. So if you're listening to this and you've struggled with those kind of things, and you've put yourself in Christian community and it's just not seeming to get better, don't hesitate to ask somebody for help.
Yeah.
And professional help. You can come to a pastor like me, and I can counsel you. You can speak to Jesse or somebody as a deacon or an elder or even just a Christian friend, and they can give you some great advice. But there comes times when you need professional help.
Yeah.
When people you wouldn't go to me or to Jesse if you had cancer, right?
No, I hope not, because I couldn't do anything for you.
No. If you needed your leg amputated, well, I got a pocket knife. I could do that, but you'd probably still die.
Yeah.
You go to a professional, and if you're struggling with it right now as you listen to this, there are people out there that can help. And I'm going to give you a number. If you have suicidal thoughts, and being a youth pastor, it's amazing how many of the kids that I dealt with had suicidal thoughts that nobody would have ever thought they were having those thoughts. Get help, and there's a number you can call. It's 1-800-273-8255, and that's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And they would love to talk to you and just kind of guide you through this whole process. Or find a professional counselor that's close to you in your community right now. Or you can give us a call, shoot me an email. I've got counselors I can line you up with. My email is greg@mynorthview.church, and we would love to help you out with that. You got anything that you want to add to the end of this?
Yeah, I think to that point, we're talking about being able to get professional help and do things like that. And I feel like so many times as Christians, and just because I personally have been through this, I feel like so many times as Christians, we feel like when we walk into a church or whenever we walk into a church event that we have to act the part, and that we have to look how everybody looks and act how everybody acts. I don't think that's how Jesus intended it. And I think that it's really hard to admit when you need help, but I think that if you do, it just makes it so much easier. And that's a lot of the reason why Megan's probably going to laugh at me, because I told you about, breaking down a little bit over the weekend. But that's why I'm as open as I am, is because, when I was younger, I would go to church and I would try to act the part and look like I was the perfect Christian. Nobody's a perfect Christian. Jesus is the only perfect human that will ever or has ever walked the earth. So I think that to hold ourselves to those standards is unrealistic.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's why the suicide rate and the depression rate is so high for pastors, because
could be.
It's not like this at our church. I feel pretty comfortable at our church, but some churches you can't be transparent.
Yeah.
If you show a crack, they're going to cut you.
Yeah.
And you're going to be out of there. So,
and how silly is that?
It's crazy
when you think about it.
Yeah, pastors should not be put on pedestals. We are people just like everyone else. Deacons should not be put on pedestals. Elders should not be put on pedestals. We all struggle with the same stuff everybody else is struggling with. So this isn't directed to our church, because I feel the love.
No,
I love your
too.
pastors. Yeah. Show them you care, and just tell them you love them and that you're there for them, because they need it just as much as anybody else does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and looking forward to next week. We've got some cool holiday stuff we're going to start talking about pretty soon.
That's right.
Yeah, because Jesse, that's all he comes up with right now is apparently holiday topics. So we're going to have some fun.
There was one really cool one that I sent at the end about Thanksgiving, but I forget what it was. I was in the zone.
Well, we're going to do that next week. Thanksgiving's almost here. And as we talk about that, just to tell you, we have a Thanksgiving meal coming up here at Northview Church. It's a totally free meal.
I'm not cooking.
Yeah, I'm not cooking. We're having it done by people who can make good food.
Yeah.
All the COVID restrictions are being followed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a takeout meal, because we don't want to gather as a large group eating in the building when we can't wear masks or anything like that. So you can go on our website, mynorthview.church, and there's a link on there called The Hub. And under the Hub, you can go and sign up for your meal for Thanksgiving. Pick the time you want to come get it, and just swing by here at the church, and we'll hand you a to-go meal. You can go home and enjoy it with your family. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to being with you next week on Maybe You Are Interested, a podcast of Northview Church.
Thanks.